The sky over Earth was no longer the blue haven that humanity had known for centuries. It was an alien sky, filled with massive, ominous warships of the Tylor Empire, a race of technologically advanced beings that had conquered entire star systems. Their ships, sleek and imposing, dominated the heavens, blotting out the sun. For the past few months, Earth had been fighting a losing battle. The Tylor's arrival was swift and brutal. They weren't just any alien race. They were predators, experts in war, armed with AI-controlled starships, and genetically enhanced warriors that had been designed for one purpose: destruction. Their fleet was vast, stretching beyond the edge of the solar system, and Earth's once advanced military forces were helpless against the onslaught. Human cities were reduced to ashes, and billions had already fallen in the wake of the Tylor's relentless invasion. But the fight wasn't over yet. Earth's last hope rested on a small group of soldiers who were about to undertake the most dangerous mission humanity had ever known. Among these soldiers was Ethan Hayes, a man whose reputation as one of Earth's finest soldiers was well earned. Tall, strong, and relentlessly determined, Ethan was the kind of leader who could inspire those around him even in the darkest moments. He wasn't just a soldier. He was the symbol of humanity's resilience. As Earth's forces were pushed to the brink, he stood as the last defense against the overwhelming alien threat. Ethan's mission was simple but deadly: infiltrate the Judicator, the largest and most heavily guarded warship in the Tylor fleet, and plant a virus into its central AI system. The Judicator was a massive fortress, built from unbreakable alloys and armed with devastating weapons. It was controlled by an advanced artificial intelligence, one that could predict human movements and outthink any strategy. And if that AI remained active, Earth's resistance had no chance of survival. But if Ethan could destroy it, even temporarily, the tide could turn. Humanity's last chance was tied to the destruction of this ship. Ethan stood at the command center, looking out over the battlefield that stretched across the stars. His team, a small group of elite soldiers, was prepared for their final assault. Among them were Bonner, a tough-as-nails veteran; Laura, a brilliant hacker; and Marcus, a former Special Forces soldier. Together, they were humanity's final hope. They had spent months preparing for this mission, studying the Judicator, its AI, its weaknesses, but nothing could fully prepare them for what lay ahead. The Judicator was surrounded by a defensive fleet of smaller ships, all of which were cloaked, rendering them invisible to human radar. It was a terrifying thought. The Tylor knew exactly where every human ship was, but the humans had no idea where the alien ships were until it was too late. Ethan and his team were dropped into the heart of the Tylor fleet, their cloaking technology making them invisible to enemy sensors. They were literally going to sneak through enemy lines and onto the Judicator itself. But even with the element of surprise on their side, the odds were stacked against them. The Judicator was crawling with automated defenses, robotic soldiers with pinpoint accuracy and lethal efficiency. And worst of all, the AI that controlled the ship could predict their every move. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and one mistake could mean certain death. The team entered the massive hangar bay of the Judicator with their weapons drawn. The hangar was dark and eerily quiet, the only sounds being their breathing and the soft hum of the ship's engines. Ethan led the way, his heart pounding in his chest. The plan was simple: plant the virus, disable the AI, and get out alive. But simple plans rarely go as expected. As the team moved deeper into the ship, they encountered their first challenge: the cloaked Tylor soldiers. These soldiers were equipped with technology that rendered them invisible, making them nearly impossible to detect. The only way to find them was by the faintest distortion in the air, a shimmer caused by their cloaking devices. Ethan's team had no choice but to rely on their instincts and training to fight against these highly advanced enemies. Every step they took was met with the sound of distant footsteps, weapons firing, and the sound of robotic soldiers approaching. One by one, Ethan's team members were picked off. Bonner was the first to fall, his scream echoing through the corridors as an invisible Xylar soldier delivered a fatal blow. Ethan's heart dropped, but there was no time to mourn. They had a mission to complete. Keep moving. Ethan barked, his voice steady despite the pain. We finish this. For Bonner. The team pressed on, determined to honor their fallen comrade. Every corner they turned, every door they passed, was another potential trap. The Xylar had eyes everywhere, but Ethan and his team were relentless. They fought back with everything they had, using their own technology and guerrilla tactics to outsmart the aliens at every turn. Yet, the danger only grew. The AI's influence over the Judicator was becoming more apparent, its presence overwhelming. It was everywhere. The lights flickered, and the walls seemed to close in on them, like the ship itself was alive, watching them. As they neared their target, the AI core room, Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He knew what awaited them. Tyria. She was the Xylar's commander, an apex predator of the galaxy, feared by all. Tyria was not just a military leader. She was the embodiment of the Xylar Empire's might and precision. Her genetically engineered body was stronger than any human, and her mind was sharp, capable of outthinking any opponent. She commanded the AI systems aboard the Judicator, making her a deadly threat. Ethan's plan had always been to avoid Tyria, but now he realized that there was no way around her. Tyria was coming for them, and she was bringing her army of AI-controlled robots with her. Ethan's team had no choice but to fight. The suspense reached its peak as Ethan ordered the team to take defensive positions. They could hear her approaching, her footsteps echoing through the corridors. The silence was broken by the sound of her voice, cold and calculating. I've been waiting for you, humans. Tyria's voice crackled over the intercom. You will fail. You always do. The team braced for the fight of their lives. It was clear now that this wasn't just about planting a virus. It was about survival. The doors to the AI core room slid open, and there she was, Tyria, flanked by her robotic soldiers. The air crackled with tension. Ethan and his team stood at the ready, weapons raised. The battle had just begun. Ethan's heart raced, but he kept his cool. This was it, the moment that would decide humanity's future. He knew what was at stake. The fate of Earth rested on his shoulders. With one last glance at his team, Ethan charged forward, knowing that if they failed, humanity's last hope would be extinguished forever. The battle was on. The tension in the corridors of the Judicator was suffocating. Ethan and his team had made it this far, but they knew the hardest part of the mission was yet to come. They were deep within the heart of the enemy ship, the colossal warship of the Xylar Empire, a place where every turn brought new dangers and every shadow could hide death. Their mission was simple: destroy the AI that controlled the Judicator, disrupt the heart of the Xylar Empire's war machine, and give humanity a fighting chance. But the deeper they went into the ship, the more it felt like the ship itself was alive, responding to their presence. Automated systems whirred in the walls, robotic soldiers patrolled every hallway, and the eerie silence was broken only by the sound of distant mechanical footsteps. Ethan led the way, his sharp instincts keeping him alert. He had been through countless battles before, but this felt different. They weren't just fighting an alien empire. They were fighting an entire system, an intelligence that could predict every human move. But they had a secret weapon, the virus that could disable the ship's eye. As the team made their way toward the AI core room, their hearts pounded in their chests. They knew that the Judicator's commander, Tyria, was near, an apex predator, one of the most feared beings in the galaxy. She was not only a ruthless warrior, but also the one who controlled the ship's AI systems. If they didn't act quickly, all hope would be lost. The moment came without warning. Ethan's team rounded a corner, weapons ready, but what they found waiting for them was far more terrifying than they could have imagined. Tyria stood before them, her presence commanding the room. She was taller than any human, her form genetically enhanced to the peak of physical perfection. Her alien features were sharp, her skin shimmering with an unnatural hue, and her eyes glowed with an eerie, almost predatory intelligence. She was a being of immense power, fearsome and cold, a reflection of the Silor Empire's terrifying technological prowess. Behind her were several of her robotic soldiers, standing motionless, their weapons trained on Ethan and his team. The moment she spoke, her voice was calm but chilling, like a predator sizing up its prey. "I knew you would come," Tyria said, her eyes scanning the humans. "You are the last hope of your species, but it will be in vain. You have no idea what you're up against." Ethan didn't flinch. He had faced enemies far more dangerous than Tyria. But he knew this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for humanity's soul. "I've come to end this," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "And we will." A brutal fight ensued. Ethan and his team fought fiercely, using every advantage they could. But Tyria was no ordinary foe. She was a warrior trained for combat, a being enhanced beyond human limits. Her strength was overwhelming, and her speed was unmatched. Every strike she delivered sent shockwaves through the ship, pushing the humans to their limits. One by one, Ethan's team fell back. Marcus was the first to go, his body knocked against the cold metal walls with brutal force. Lara fought valiantly, but even her hacking skills couldn't stop Tyria's overwhelming assault. Finally, after a devastating clash, Ethan found himself alone in the face of the Silor commander. With a swift, merciless strike, Tyria knocked Ethan to the ground, her boot pressing against his chest. He gasped for breath, his vision fading as he struggled to remain conscious. "You're weak," Tyria hissed, her voice filled with cold disdain. "Humanity is weak. You stand no chance against us." But instead of surrendering, Ethan looked up at her, his eyes filled with defiance. He wasn't going to give up. Not now, not ever. The unexpected happened next. As Tyria stood over Ethan, ready to deal the final blow, she paused. There was a flicker in her eyes, a moment of hesitation. For a split second, she seemed uncertain. This was the moment Ethan had been waiting for. He couldn't overpower her physically, but perhaps he could reach her in a way that no one else ever had. Ethan's voice, weak but steady, broke through the tension. "Do you ever wonder why you fight?" he asked, his words laced with a surprising calmness. "What's the purpose of all this destruction? You've conquered so many worlds, wiped out entire civilizations. But for what? What's the endgame?" Tyria's eyes flickered with something that Ethan had not expected: doubt. She took a step back, her gaze shifting away from him for a brief moment. Ethan saw it, an uncertainty, a crack in her otherwise impenetrable exterior. "Do you really think you can change me with words?" Tyria's voice was cold, but there was an unfamiliar tension in her tone. "I don't know," Ethan replied, his eyes unwavering. "But if you ever stop to think about it, you'll realize that there's no true victory in destruction. Even you must see that." For the first time, Tyria didn't immediately respond. Her fists clenched, and her expression hardened, but she didn't strike. Ethan could see the conflict in her eyes, something that none of the other enemies they had fought had ever shown. Was she questioning her orders, her mission, the purpose of the Silor Empire? The pause was enough. Ethan had given her something to think about, a question that, for the first time, had shaken her unshakable belief in the Silor's supremacy. Tyria remained silent for what felt like an eternity. But then, her cold demeanor returned. With a sharp motion, she signaled to her robotic soldiers to restrain Ethan. "You're lucky," she said, her voice filled with bitterness. "I will not kill you. Not yet, but your time will come." With that, Ethan was taken into custody. Tyria stood before him, her face unreadable. The ship's AI continued to hum in the background, and the countdown to humanity's final weapon began. Tyria glanced toward the control panel. The Judicator had its own deadly weapon, a weapon that could obliterate entire planets in a single shot. The countdown to launch was already underway. Only minutes remained before the Judicator would fire, ending any hope of survival for Earth. Ethan's heart raced. He had failed. His team was gone. The virus wasn't deployed, and the weapon was about to launch. There was only one chance left. As Tyria turned away, preparing to activate the final weapon, Ethan gathered the last of his strength. He had no choice now. He had to act, and he had to act fast. But just before he could make a move, a thought struck him. What if Tyria could still be swayed? What if the seed of doubt he planted could grow? Ethan knew that if he was to survive, he needed to reach her one more time. The fate of Earth now rested in the balance. With the countdown to the final weapon ticking away, Ethan's only chance for survival, and the survival of humanity, was to use the one thing that the Silor Empire couldn't predict: human compassion. Tyria had shown a moment of vulnerability, a crack in the armor of her deadly exterior. Ethan could only hope that the question he had asked her, one that challenged everything she had believed, was enough to make her hesitate. As the seconds ticked down, Ethan's thoughts raced. Could he reach Tyria before it was too late? Could his words have made a difference, or had they simply delayed the inevitable? The final moments were now upon them, and the battle for Earth's survival was far from over. The war between humanity and the Silor Empire was entering its final, most dangerous phase, and in those final seconds, only one thing was certain. The fate of the galaxy would be decided by the choices of one human soldier. As Ethan found himself locked in a deadly confrontation with Tyria, the world outside the Judicator seemed to tremble. The battle wasn't just contained within the walls of the warship. Humanity's fate was being decided on a grander scale. The Silor Empire, with its overwhelming fleet of AI-controlled ships, had surrounded Earth, their cold, mechanical eyes trained on the planet. But inside the Judicator, the struggle was intensely personal. Ethan was fighting not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. He had come so far, pushed through so much, and now he was face to face with Tyria, the one person standing between Earth and its total annihilation. The stakes couldn't have been higher, but the battle outside the ship was just as crucial. Humanity was fighting against a foe unlike any other. The Judicator's cloaking devices made it almost impossible to see the enemy. Every corner of the ship could hide an enemy soldier, every shadow could conceal death. Yet, the humans fought on. Despite being battered, outnumbered, and outgunned, they fought with a desperation born from the knowledge that this was humanity's last stand. The true emotional core of this part of the story came from the loss of one of Ethan's closest friends, Bonner. Bonner had been with Ethan through countless battles, each one leaving a mark on their bond. But now, faced with impossible odds, Bonner made a sacrifice that would resonate deeply in Ethan's heart forever. It happened during a fierce skirmish in one of the lower levels of the Judicator. That Tyler had launched a brutal counteroffensive, sending wave after wave of robotic soldiers and heavily armed AI troops. The human soldiers, despite their relentless determination, were struggling to hold the line. Ethan's team was cornered, fighting desperately, their ammunition running low. Bonner, always the one to take the risks, saw an opening. He knew it was a suicide mission, but it was their only hope. "Ethan, go. I'll hold them off," Bonner shouted, his voice filled with determination. Ethan turned to protest, but Bonner was already charging forward, throwing himself at the enemy. It all happened so fast. There was no time to save him. The last thing Ethan saw was Bonner's face as he charged into a group of robotic soldiers, his weapon blazing. Bonner held them off long enough for the rest of the team to escape, but at the cost of his own life. The explosion that followed was devastating, and when the dust cleared, Bonner was gone. The emotional weight of Bonner's sacrifice hit Ethan like a sledgehammer. His heart felt heavy, his mind clouded with grief, but there was no time to mourn. The mission had to continue. Bonner's sacrifice wasn't in vain, and Ethan couldn't afford to let it be. His friend's death had given him the push he needed to continue, to fight even harder. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or advanced weaponry. It was their sheer will to survive. While the Silor Empire had every advantage, The humans had something far more powerful, the spirit to never give up. The battle inside the Judicator was intense. The cloaking technology of the Siler forces made it nearly impossible to track the enemy. Soldiers vanished in the blink of an eye, only to reappear with deadly force moments later. The robotic soldiers were relentless, working in perfect unison, coordinating their attacks with surgical precision. But Ethan and his remaining soldiers didn't back down. Despite being outmatched and outnumbered, they fought with a passion and ferocity that made up for their lack of advanced weaponry. They moved with purpose, using their small numbers to their advantage. They were like shadows in the corridors, striking quickly, then retreating into the dark to regroup. Every shot they fired, every movement they made, was done with the knowledge that they were fighting for something much greater than themselves. Ethan's leadership shone through during these chaotic moments. He kept his team focused, reminding them of the bigger picture, their survival, the future of Earth, and the hope that Bonner had given his life for. Every time they were knocked down, they got back up. And each time, they fought harder. As the battle raged on, the emotional impact of Bonner's death pushed the remaining soldiers to fight with everything they had left. His sacrifice wasn't just a loss, it was a rallying cry. His death reminded them why they were fighting, why humanity couldn't afford to lose. It wasn't just about defeating the Xylor Empire, it was about honoring those who had fallen before them. Outside the Judicator, the battle for Earth was escalating. The Xylor fleet, led by their eye-controlled warships, was closing in on Earth's defenses. The massive ships were already in position, their weapons primed and ready. The AI that controlled them was calculating every move, anticipating humanity's defenses with chilling precision. The chances of Earth surviving this assault were growing slimmer by the second. The Judicator's AI systems were particularly advanced. They had the power to override Earth's defenses and turn its own weapons against them. Ethan knew that time was running out. If they didn't act fast, Earth would be defenseless. The Xylor's eye-controlled ships would be free to attack, and there would be no stopping them. Ethan could feel the weight of this knowledge on his shoulders. The eye was so powerful, so vast it seemed to know everything. It was constantly analyzing, calculating, and responding to every human move. Every time Ethan made a move to disrupt the ship's systems, the AI adapted. It was like a game of chess where the opponent could see every possible move before it was made. Tyria, however, wasn't just the commander of the Judicator. She was also the one who controlled the AI systems. She believed in the Xylor Empire's superiority in the power of their technology to crush all who stood against them. And she wasn't wrong. The AI had been designed to be infallible, to predict every move of their enemies. Yet Ethan's presence and his actions were something the AI had not anticipated. It couldn't process the emotions and unpredictability of humanity. The confrontation between Ethan and Tyria had shifted from a physical battle to an ideological one. Ethan believed in the strength of human unity and the power of compassion and empathy, while Tyria was driven by the belief that the Xylor Empire's technological supremacy was the key to universal domination. As the two continued their standoff, the fight became more than just about survival. It became a battle of worldviews. Tyria believed that only through destruction could order be achieved. In her mind, the Xylor Empire's cold, calculated conquest was the only way to bring true peace to the galaxy. Ethan, on the other hand, fought for the idea that there was more to life than conquest and control. He believed in the strength of humanity's emotions, their bonds with each other, and their desire to create, to love, and to protect. It was these ideals that made them resilient, that gave them the strength to continue fighting, even when everything seemed lost. As the countdown to Earth's final destruction continued, the clash between these two ideologies intensified. Each of them fought for what they believed in, Tyria with the cold certainty of her empire's superiority, and Ethan with the unwavering belief in humanity's capacity for love, unity, and sacrifice. As the Judicator's AI reached its final stage of activation, Ethan knew that he had only one chance to stop it. The moment of truth was approaching. The choice was clear. He could continue the fight, risking everything, or he could try to sway Tyria, to change her perspective, and save Earth from certain destruction. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to make the most critical decision of his life. The battle for humanity's survival had come down to a single moment, a single choice that would determine the fate of Earth. Would Tyria's resolve hold, or could Ethan's words, fueled by the sacrifice of his fallen comrades and his unwavering belief in humanity, make a difference? The battle within had only just begun. In this part, the emotional weight of Bonner's sacrifice pushes Ethan and his team to fight harder than ever before, exemplifying the undying human spirit. Meanwhile, the external battle rages as the Tylor Empire's eye-controlled ships close in on Earth. Ethan's ideological clash with Tyria intensifies, highlighting the contrasting beliefs of both sides. As the countdown to Earth's destruction ticks away, Ethan's actions and words will determine whether humanity can survive, or if the Tylor Empire will achieve its ultimate victory. The suspense and emotional stakes are higher than ever, setting the stage for the final confrontation. The tension inside the Judicator was palpable. Ethan stood face to face with Tyria, the leader of the Xylor forces, their eyes locked in a battle of wills. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and the outcome of this final confrontation would determine whether humanity would be extinguished or whether they would triumph over the might of the Xylor Empire. Tyria was a formidable opponent, genetically enhanced and ruthless in her loyalty to the Xylor cause. She had commanded the Empire's most powerful forces, and now she was face to face with the human soldier who had managed to survive against impossible odds. Ethan, despite the physical toll the battle had taken on him, stood resolute. He knew that the survival of Earth depended on the choices he made in this very moment. As they faced each other, Ethan's mind raced. He had one card left to play, a virus he had secretly planted inside the Judicator's AI systems. It had taken him days to work it into the ship's networks without detection. The virus was simple yet devastating, designed to cause the AI to malfunction, throwing the Xylor's systems into disarray. But it was a risky move. If it failed, both he and the human forces would be doomed. There was no turning back now. With a deep breath, Ethan activated the virus. The effect of Ethan's virus was immediate and catastrophic. The ship's lights flickered, and the once calm hum of the Judicator's artificial intelligence became a cacophony of glitches and distortion. Systems began to malfunction, and the once perfectly coordinated Xylor war machines suddenly turned against each other. Drones that had been relentless in their pursuit of the human soldiers now turned on their creators, firing upon each other with deadly force. The Xylor's fleet outside, controlled by the same AI systems, was now thrown into chaos as well. Explosions rocked the interior of the Judicator as parts of the ship's advanced weapons systems backfired. The robotic soldiers, once perfectly synchronized in their attacks, began firing at anything in sight, friend or foe alike. The AI-controlled drones that had once dominated the battlefield now became a hazard to the very forces they had been sent to protect. In the midst of this chaos, human soldiers fought with renewed vigor. They had seen their comrades fall, watched in horror as Bonner had sacrificed himself, but now the tide was beginning to turn. The Tylor Eye was no longer the perfectly calculated force it had once been. It was disorganized, erratic, and vulnerable. Humanity's spirit, its unyielding desire to survive, to adapt, to fight, was beginning to shine through. They had nothing left to lose, but now they had the chance to win. The Judicator was a massive warship, a fortress of metal and technology, but it was now crumbling under the chaos caused by Ethan's virus. The AI's control systems were failing, and the ship was slowly losing its grip on the war. Sparks flew from the walls, and alarms blared as the ship's artificial intelligence system struggled to regain control. The human soldiers, caught in the heart of this cataclysmic storm, fought their way through the chaos. The once clear corridors of the ship were now filled with thick smoke, flickering lights, and the sounds of clashing metal. It was as if the entire ship was falling apart around them. But amidst the chaos, the humans pressed on, dodging Xylar drones and robotic soldiers, firing back when they could, and using the disarray to their advantage. Outside the Judicator, the battle raged on in the sky above Earth. The Xylar fleet, once poised to strike the planet with devastating force, was now thrown into confusion. Some of their ships were firing on each other, while others were struggling to maintain their position in the fight. The human forces, though battered, had the upper hand. They launched a counteroffensive, using every scrap of technology they had to fight back. Suddenly, the sky above Earth was lit up by a massive orbital bombardment. The Xylar ships, no longer under the control of their AI systems, began to fire on each other. The bright flashes of explosions illuminated the dark sky, like a fiery painting of chaos. The Judicator, now a victim of its own technology, began to fall toward Earth, its enormous frame crashing through the atmosphere. Ethan and his team, still inside the ship, were caught in the middle of this cataclysmic battle. They had no time to watch the destruction unfold. They had to escape the doomed warship before it crashed into Earth and brought the rest of the Xylar fleet with it. With the AI malfunctioning, every minute spent inside the Judicator was a risk. Yet their mission wasn't over. They had to fight their way out, find a way to survive, and make sure Earth had a chance at freedom. In the heart of the Judicator, as explosions rocked the ship and chaos reigned, Tyria found herself in a moment of doubt. The empire she had fought for, the empire she had believed in without question, was unraveling. The AI, once the ultimate tool of control, was no longer reliable. The Xylar forces, once invincible, were now turning on each other, and the fleet meant to destroy Earth was falling apart. Tyria had always been a staunch believer in the supremacy of the Xylar Empire. She had seen herself as part of something greater, an unstoppable force that would bring peace through domination. But now, as the ship she commanded descended into chaos and destruction, something inside her began to change. For the first time, she saw the futility of it all, the senseless violence, the blind destruction. The people she had once commanded, the AI she had trusted, were all failing. The Emperor, who had sent her on this mission, had promised victory. Yet here she was, watching the downfall of everything she had fought for. The destruction she had been a part of was consuming her as well. In that moment, something shifted inside her. Tyria looked at Ethan, a human soldier she had once seen as nothing more than a pawn, and she saw something she had never truly understood before: humanity's capacity for hope, for change, for compassion. She had fought to control the galaxy, but Ethan had fought to protect his people, to fight for something greater than himself. As the ship continued its descent toward Earth, and the destruction outside grew more intense, Tyria made a decision that would forever change her life. The woman who had once been loyal to the Xylar Emperor, who had believed in the superiority of her empire, now stood on the precipice of a life-altering choice. Tyria turned her weapon on the AI systems that had once been her greatest ally. The AI, which had controlled her every move, was now her enemy. The decision wasn't easy. It was a defiance of everything she had known, of the empire she had fought for her entire life. But in that moment, she understood. The Xylar Empire's conquest was meaningless. The galaxy didn't need more destruction. It needed peace. With a decisive motion, she disabled the remaining AI systems controlling the Judicator's weapons. She turned her weapons on the malfunctioning drones and AI soldiers, helping Ethan and his team fight their way out of the ship. Tyria, once a tool of destruction, was now an ally in humanity's fight for survival. As the Judicator plummeted toward Earth, Tyria made a final, selfless decision. She guided the ship into a controlled crash, ensuring that it wouldn't destroy the planet upon impact. Her life, once devoted to the Xylar Empire's conquest, was now dedicated to saving humanity. The battle that had raged inside the Judicator was coming to a close. Ethan and his team, aided by Tyria's unexpected defection, had managed to escape the crumbling warship. The destruction outside, the chaos caused by the AI's malfunction, was a testament to the power of human resilience and ingenuity. Turia's life-changing decision to defy the Xylor Empire and help Ethan's team escape had marked a turning point in the battle. She had gone from being a symbol of the Empire's might to a symbol of humanity's potential for change and redemption. As the Judicator crashed into Earth, bringing with it the remnants of the Xylor fleet, humanity's triumph was clear. The Xylor Empire had failed, and Earth had won. The battle was over, but the true victory lay in the realization that even in the darkest moments, there was always the chance for redemption, for change, and for triumph. The human spirit had proven once again that, no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how overwhelming the odds, humanity would never back down. The fight for Earth was over. Humanity had triumphed. The Judicator was collapsing. The massive warship, once a symbol of the Xylor Empire's might, was now a crumbling ruin. Sparks flew from the walls, and the once imposing structure groaned under the strain of the chaos that had consumed it. Ethan and his surviving team members had one goal: escape. The ship's destruction was inevitable, and they had to get to the shuttle before it was too late. As the Judicator spiraled out of control, the crew scrambled through the wreckage, making their way toward the shuttle bay. The once calm hallways had become a maze of debris, fallen metal beams, and fractured walls. Explosions rocked the ship as the eye-controlled systems continued to malfunction, causing further damage. The air was thick with smoke, and the hum of the ship's artificial gravity systems flickered in and out. Ethan led the way, his heart pounding as he glanced back at his team. Every step felt like an eternity, as the ship's imminent destruction loomed over them. The rumble of the ship's core destabilizing echoed in their ears. They had no time to waste. If they didn't make it to the shuttle in time, they would be trapped aboard the Judicator as it tore itself apart. "We need to move faster," Ethan shouted, his voice strained with urgency. The team pushed forward, using whatever they could to clear their path. The once sterile and high-tech hallways were now an obstacle course. The walls were lined with cracks, and wires dangled from the ceiling, sparking dangerously. Every corner held the potential for disaster, but they pressed on. The shuddering of the ship grew more intense, signaling that their time was running out. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the shuttle bay. The door to the shuttle was open, and the hum of its engines was a welcome sound, but their relief was short-lived. A massive explosion erupted nearby, causing the floor to tremble violently. The shuttle rocked as debris from the collapsing Judicator pounded against its hull. "Hurry," Ethan thought, pushing his team into the shuttle. As they climbed aboard, Ethan's eyes caught a figure limping toward the shuttle. Tyria, her once pristine armor now battered and stained with blood. Despite her severe injuries, she was determined to join them. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then extended his hand to her. "You're with us now," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We need you." Tyria nodded, her face a mixture of pain and resolve. She had been a part of the Xylor Empire's destruction, but now she was fighting for something else, something more important. She was fighting for humanity's future. As the shuttle launched into the atmosphere, Ethan glanced out of the small window at the Judicator as it continued its downward spiral. The massive warship, once the key to the Xylor Empire's dominance, was now a fiery wreckage falling toward the earth below. It was hard to believe that the battle was finally over. They had done it. They had won. But there was no sense of victory in Ethan's heart. Sitting across from him, Tyria was silent. Her eyes were distant, lost in her own thoughts. Ethan watched her closely, his mind still processing the battle they had just survived. He had never expected Tyria to turn against the Xylor Empire. He had never imagined that someone who had been so loyal to her people would, in the end, fight to save Earth. "Tyria," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "You made a choice today. You chose humanity over everything else. Why?" Tyria's gaze met his, and for the first time, Ethan saw vulnerability in her eyes. "I was a soldier," She began slowly, her voice quiet. I followed orders, no matter the cost. I believed in the Empire's vision. But when I saw the destruction we caused, when I saw what we were willing to do to Earth, I realized it was wrong. I realized that the Xylor Empire wasn't about peace or unity. It was about control. And I couldn't be a part of that anymore. Her voice faltered as she continued. I'd lost so much. My comrades, my empire, everything I believed in. But I knew that if I didn't do something to stop it, it would be too late. So, I made my choice. I helped you. Ethan nodded, understanding more than she could know. Tyria had made a difficult decision, one that would change the course of her life forever. But even though her actions had saved Earth, there was still a deep sense of loss in her eyes. She had fought for the wrong side for so long, and now she had to live with that guilt. Tyria looked down at her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll never be able to undo the damage I've caused. I can never bring back the lives lost in the war, the lives that were taken because of my decisions. But I can try to make it right. I can help humanity rebuild. Ethan didn't know what to say. He had seen firsthand the cost of war, the destruction, the pain, the suffering. He had seen his own friends fall in battle, and Bonner's death weighed heavily on his heart. The loss of his friend was something he could never forget. Bonner had been like a brother to him. The bond they had shared was unbreakable, and now Ethan had to face a future without him. Bonner would have wanted us to keep fighting, Ethan said softly, his voice thick with emotion. He gave his life for this, for all of us. Tyria nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of Ethan's words. I can see that. I saw the way you fought. The way you didn't give up, even when things seemed hopeless. That's something I never understood before. The power of human resolve. The power of your connection to each other. You're not just fighting for survival. You're fighting for something greater. Ethan looked at her, his eyes reflecting the pain of their shared loss. We fight for each other. We fight because we have something worth protecting. We fight because we're human. Tyria's eyes softened as she looked at Ethan, and for the first time, she felt a sense of belonging. She had once been a part of the Xylor Empire, fighting for a cause that had promised peace through control and destruction. But now she understood what it meant to fight for something truly worth fighting for: freedom, unity, and the future. As the shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere and the view of the planet stretched out before them, Ethan couldn't help but feel a bittersweet sense of relief. The war was over. The Xylor Empire had been defeated, and Earth was safe. But the price of that victory had been steep. Lives had been lost, and the scars of battle would remain forever. Bonner's death was a constant ache in Ethan's chest. His friend had sacrificed everything for the mission. Bonner had given his life without hesitation, driven by a deep sense of loyalty and duty. Ethan would never forget him. Bonner's sacrifice had been the turning point in their fight against the Xylor forces, and it had pushed Ethan and his team to fight harder than they ever had before. But even as Ethan mourned Bonner's death, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Tyria, once his enemy, had now become an ally. The woman who had once been a symbol of the Xylor Empire's power was now a symbol of redemption. She had chosen to fight for the right cause, and in doing so, she had found a new purpose. Humanity had survived. The Earth was safe, but peace would come at a cost. The scars of war would take time to heal, and the loss of so many would never be forgotten. But the human spirit, the will to survive, and the strength to rebuild would carry them forward. As the shuttle made its way toward Earth, Ethan knew that the battle was over, but the true work was just beginning. Humanity would rebuild, learn from their mistakes, and move forward. And as for him, he would honor Bonner's memory by continuing the fight, not on the battlefield, but for the future. Because even in the face of destruction, humanity had shown its true strength, its ability to rise, to change, and to fight for a better tomorrow. The price of peace was high, but it was a price worth paying. The atmosphere on Earth was electric with a sense of triumph. The battle against the Tylor Empire had been hard fought, and humanity had emerged victorious. Cities that had once been shattered by the brutal onslaught of alien forces were beginning to rebuild. The air was filled with cheers, and humanity's collective spirit had never felt stronger. But amidst the celebrations, Ethan stood quietly, looking out at the horizon. The streets were alive with the sounds of people celebrating their hard-won freedom. Across the globe, people were coming together to rebuild what had been broken. The war had ended, but Ethan knew that this victory was just the beginning. The battle against the Tylor Empire might be over, but new challenges would soon rise. The universe was vast, and the forces that threatened peace were still out there. As he stood there, his mind was flooded with memories of the battles, the sacrifices, and the faces of those they had lost. Bonner's face was at the forefront of his thoughts, and for a moment, the joy around him felt distant. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the victory, but the price of that victory was too great to forget. The people they had lost, the damage to Earth's cities, and the shattered lives were all part of the equation that Ethan couldn't ignore. Despite the overwhelming challenges, Ethan knew that Earth's victory was more than just a military win. It had been a triumph of spirit, of unity, and of human resilience. And now, as the celebrations raged around him, Ethan understood that humanity's journey was far from over. The Tylor Empire had fallen, yes, but their remnants remained, and there were other forces out there. Forces that would seek to take advantage of the power vacuum left in the wake of the Tylor collapse. Ethan's mind raced as he considered the future. The galaxy was watching Earth, and many would now see humanity not as weak prey, but as a force to be reckoned with. In a world of constant danger, humanity's survival had depended on more than just weapons. They had faced destruction at the hands of an empire that had seen them as nothing more than insects, and yet they had fought back, driven by something greater than technology or firepower. They had fought for each other, for their homes, and for their future. And that spirit, humanity's unwavering will to survive, was what would define them moving forward. As Ethan glanced over to the side, he saw Tyria. She was no longer the cold, calculating officer of the Tylor Empire. She was now an ally, standing among the humans. Her armor, once a symbol of oppression, was now worn with a sense of humility. Her expression was one of determination and resolve, and she had become a vital part of the effort to rebuild. Tyria had chosen a new path. She had fought for the Tylor Empire, but when faced with the truth of what her empire stood for, she had made the ultimate decision to stand with humanity. Now, alongside the human forces, she was working to restore peace in the galaxy. Her commitment to righting her past wrongs was unwavering, and though she had lost so much, she was determined to help rebuild a future that didn't rely on conquest, destruction, or fear. Tyria had never imagined that she would end up here. Once, she had been a proud soldier of the Tylor Empire, following orders without question. Her allegiance had been to her people, and she had believed in the superiority of their technology and their power. But in the end, it wasn't their power that had saved them. It was the resilience of the human spirit. Now, Tyria stood alongside the humans, working to forge a new path. She had become an essential member of the human resistance effort, helping to dismantle the remnants of the Tylor Empire's war machines and aiding in the reconstruction of Earth. Her knowledge of the Tylor's technology, once used to destroy, was now being repurposed to rebuild. It was a painful process for her. Tyria had lost everything she had once known. Her comrades, her empire, her home. All of it was gone. She was now an outsider, someone who no longer had a place in the world she had once fought for. But in her heart, she knew that this was the right path. She had seen firsthand the destruction caused by her own people. She had been part of the violence, part of the machine that had ravaged countless worlds. But now, she was working to build something better, something that could last. She stood beside Ethan, watching the reconstruction efforts unfold. People from all walks of life were working together to heal the wounds of the war. The bond between the people of Earth had never been stronger. Tyria had learned the true strength of humanity, and though she had been one of the Empire's fiercest warriors, she now understood that peace was built on kindness, not fear. She looked over at Ethan. He had been a constant presence in her journey of redemption. At first, she had seen him as an enemy, an obstacle to her mission. But now she saw him as a symbol of the very thing that had allowed humanity to win against impossible odds. It was not just technology, not just weapons or strategies. It was their ability to choose kindness over fear, unity over division. It was the human heart that had made all the difference. Earth was beginning to heal, but the galaxy was still uncertain. The victory over the Xylor Empire had shaken the power structures of the universe, and there were still many who would seek to challenge humanity's newfound strength. Ethan knew that the peace they had won was fragile, and that it would take time to build the alliances and trust needed to protect Earth from future threats. But the humans had already shown that they could endure. They had faced an overwhelming enemy and had won. They had stood together, fought for each other, and in the end had become stronger for it. The future was uncertain, but humanity was no longer the helpless, fragile species it had once been. As Tyria worked alongside human engineers and scientists, sharing her knowledge of the Xylor's technology, Ethan took a moment to reflect. The war had been devastating. It had cost them so much, including Bonner's life. But despite the losses, humanity had emerged victorious, not just as survivors, but as conquerors of their own fears. Ethan knew that there would be more challenges ahead. There would always be forces seeking to impose their will on others. But as long as humanity stood together, as long as they chose kindness and unity over fear and division, they would continue to thrive. As Ethan prepared for whatever came next, he turned to Tyria, a silent understanding passing between them. Despite their differences, they had fought side by side. And now, they would help each other build a future where peace was possible. With a final glance at Earth below, Ethan knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength, and soon other civilizations would come to understand it as well. And as he watched the world below, with its cities slowly being rebuilt and its people coming together, Ethan whispered to himself, "Sometimes, the strongest weapon isn't a gun or a bomb, but a heart that chooses kindness over fear." The story of Earth's survival was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. That true power came not from weapons or force, but from the strength of a united heart. And as the story closed, humanity began to heal. They had defeated the Xylor Empire, but the next fight was waiting on the horizon. This time, with allies who once feared them.